Your dog knows you're lying to them. Not just that something feels off. Not just that your voice sounds weird. They actually know the difference between you being wrong and you being dishonest. And they treat those two things completely differently. This video is going to change how you think about animal intelligence. Most people assume animals react to outcomes. You gave the treat or you didn't. You made a sound or you didn't. Simple cause and effect. But what researchers have discovered over the last decade is something far stranger. Animals aren't just reading what happened. They're reading why it happened. And some of them are doing things with that information that we don't fully understand yet. I've gone through 10 of the most surprising studies on animal deception and social cognition, from dogs to ravens to cuttlefish. And I'm going to walk you through the ones that genuinely stopped me cold. By the end of this, you're going to have a completely different picture of what's going on inside the minds of the animals around you. Let's start with the one that almost nobody knows about, because it rewrites what we thought was uniquely human. A study out of the University of Vienna tested 260 dogs in a very specific setup. A researcher showed a dog where a treat was hidden. Then, in one version, that researcher deliberately pointed the dog to the wrong location. A lie. In another version, the researcher genuinely didn't know where the treat was and gave wrong information by mistake. Same outcome. Dog gets sent to the wrong spot. But here's what happened. The dogs behaved completely differently depending on which version they were in. When the researcher was just wrong, dogs generally still followed their guidance. When the researcher deliberately misled them, dogs were significantly more likely to ignore the instruction and search on their own. Think about what that means. The dog didn't just notice a bad outcome. It identified intent. It reasoned about whether the human meant to mislead them. That kind of reasoning, tracking the mental state of another individual, not just their actions, was supposed to be a uniquely human skill. Dogs are doing it. But here's the part that makes it even weirder. Terriers were the exception. In the same study, terriers were the only breed group that actually followed the liar more readily. At first, that sounds like terriers are worse at this, but the researchers think it means the opposite. Terriers were bred to work independently, to make their own calls, to not be overly deferential to human direction. So when a terrier follows a liar, it might not be because they trust the liar more. It might be because they're less tuned in to human social signals overall. They're not reading the deception because they weren't built to hang on your every word in the first place. The most socially calibrated dogs caught the lie. The independent thinkers missed it. That's important on its own. But if you think that's the whole picture, you're missing something even more unsettling about what dogs are tracking. A German study took this further. Researchers either accidentally dropped a treat in front of a dog or deliberately withheld it. Same result, no treat. But when the withholding was intentional, dogs waited significantly longer before approaching the researcher. They sat or lay down. They stopped wagging their tails. They weren't confused. They weren't just processing a missing treat. They were responding to the intent behind the action. The emotional and behavioral response was tied to whether it was done on purpose. And now tie this to something Swedish researchers discovered that makes the whole thing hit differently. They collected hair samples from 58 dogs and their owners and measured cortisol, the stress hormone, across summer and winter. What they found is that dogs physically mirror their owners' long-term stress levels, not just in the moment, not just when something scary happens, over months. The dog's body chemistry synchronizes with yours. And competing dogs, ones that work closely with their owners, mirrored them even more tightly than pet dogs. So when you lie to your dog, you're not just sending a signal in that moment. If you're anxious when you lie, and most people are, your dog has been absorbing your stress baseline for months. They have a physiological record of what your normal looks like. A deviation doesn't just feel off. It lands against a backdrop of deeply calibrated data about you specifically. Your dog isn't just reading your body language. They've been building a model of you for as long as they've known you. Now, dogs are one thing. We've co-evolved with them for tens of thousands of years. You might expect them to be good at reading us. But what about animals with no special relationship with humans at all? Ravens hold grudges against cheaters, and the cheaters tend to keep cheating. In a study from Lund University and the University of Vienna, ravens were given bread and allowed to trade it with a researcher for cheese, a better deal. Then, in the deception condition, the researcher took the bread and ate the cheese in front of the raven instead of trading. The raven watched this happen. And in future interactions, those ravens refused to trade with that researcher. after a single betrayal. They also showed a preference for the fair researcher when given a choice. But here's the detail that I can't stop thinking about. The ravens who cheated, the ones playing the researcher role who took the bread, when given another opportunity, were even more likely to cheat again. They didn't learn a lesson. They learned to cheat better. The cheaters got more efficient. The victims got more cautious. It's like watching a tiny, feathered version of a social ecosystem develop in real time. If you're finding this as wild as I am, drop a comment with the animal that surprised you most so far, because we're not even close to done. Capuchin monkeys famously threw cucumbers back at researchers after watching another monkey receive a grape for the same task. That study is well known, but the version most people haven't heard is more interesting. When the other monkey received the grape without doing any work at all, just handed a grape for free, rejection of the cucumber spiked even higher. The monkey wasn't just reacting to unequal pay for equal work. It had a specific, stronger response to unearned advantage. Rejection rates went from around 5% to over 50% when the grape was earned by the other monkey, and even higher when it wasn't. The monkey was tracking not just what someone got, but whether they deserved it. That's not a simple fairness instinct. That's a judgment about merit. Now we're going to leave mammals entirely, because the next two examples come from animals that should have no business doing any of this. Male cuttlefish will simultaneously display male courtship coloring on the side of their body facing a female, and female mimicking coloring on the side facing rival males. At the same time, two completely different deceptive displays running on each half of their body, calibrated to two different audiences who are both watching at once. This isn't camouflage. Camouflage is about blending in. This is audience-specific deception. The cuttlefish is tracking who is watching from which direction and adjusting what each viewer sees, independently, simultaneously. And now, new research published in 2025 in Current Biology is proposing cuttlefish and octopuses as the ideal subjects for studying tactical deception, specifically because their intelligence evolved on a completely separate branch from mammals. Octopus cognition didn't come from the same evolutionary lineage as dogs or ravens or primates. It developed independently. If an octopus shows audience-aware deception, and the evidence is building that it does, that means the cognitive architecture for lying evolved at least 3 separate times on Earth. Not once as a fluke, not twice as a coincidence. 3 separate times in 3 completely different brain structures on 3 different branches of the tree of life. That's not a curiosity, that's a pattern. It suggests that the ability to deceive may be an almost inevitable outcome of complex social cognition, regardless of what kind of brain you're running it on. Deception might not be a corruption of intelligence. It might be a signature of it. One more, and this one is the most unsettling of all. Western scrub jays hide food, and if they notice another bird watching them hide it, they'll go back later and move it. That's impressive enough, but here's the part that changes everything. This behavior only shows up in jays that have previously stolen from other birds' caches themselves. Jays with no theft experience don't rehide. They don't seem to worry about it. The jays who steal are the ones who assume others will steal too. They're projecting their own past behavior onto the birds around them. Researchers call it experience projection. The jay isn't just thinking, that bird might steal my food. It's thinking, I would steal it if I were them, so they probably will too. That is a theory of mind built on self-knowledge. It's the same cognitive move a human makes when they assume someone else is lying because they know they'd lie in that situation. So let's bring this together. Dogs don't just know you lied. They know you meant to. Ravens remember betrayal and evolve their cheating. Monkeys track whether rewards were earned. Cuttlefish run split-screen deception for 2 audiences at once. And scrub jays assume thieves because they know themselves to be thieves. The conventional view of animal cognition, that they respond to outcomes, not intentions, is not holding up. Study after study is showing that animals track mental states, model other minds, and in some cases, build long-term social records of the individuals around them. The animals have been paying closer attention than we gave them credit for. The question is whether we're ready to pay the same attention back. If this one got you, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from, and I don't want you to miss it.